All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. And today we're gonna really get into something that I think is fascinating. We're diving into frugality.
Ooh, yeah, always a good one.
I think so.
Yeah.
We're looking at the book Frugality Unlocked: How Living Simple Builds Lasting Wealth.
Okay.
And we always say how the stuff we look into is going to surprise you, and I really think that this is going to be one of those deep dives.
Yeah, I think so too. I read this one and I thought, man, there are some real nuggets of wisdom in here.
Yeah.
It's not just about like saving pennies. It's really about a different kind of mindset, I think.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we want to get into. And one of the things that I found fascinating, just right off the bat, and I know we're going to get into this,
Yeah.
is that millionaires, people who are really wealthy,
Right.
are often really frugal.
They are. And the book really delves into this. It's kind of a paradox, right? You think, oh, if you're a millionaire, you must be spending all this money. But actually, one of the core principles is that they've learned how to live below their means.
Yeah.
And that's really how they accumulate wealth and maintain it.
Yeah, and I love that because it kind of goes against the grain, right, of what we normally think about when we think about wealth.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
not about showing off. It's really about being intentional.
Intentional, yeah. So I guess before we get too far, let's kind of back up a little bit
Okay.
and just define, I mean, what are we talking about when we say frugality?
Yeah. What does it really mean?
Yeah. Does it mean like clipping coupons and never buying anything fun?
I mean, I love a good coupon, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the book actually defines it as a very disciplined use of your resources.
Okay.
So it's really about avoiding any kind of unnecessary expenses and being mindful
Okay.
about how you use your money.
So mindful spending, I guess, is a big part of it.
Absolutely.
All right. So getting back to the millionaires, I think that is so interesting because you think of millionaires and you think of, just lavish spending and big houses and fancy cars and all this stuff. But one of the things that the book talks about is how a lot of millionaires actually prioritize saving and investing over that kind of lavish spending.
Yes, absolutely. They understand the power of compounding,
Right.
right? And so they're much more likely to invest their money than to spend it on things that ultimately lose value.
Okay, so is that kind of the secret sauce then? Is that you reach a certain level of wealth, but you don't increase your spending along with it. You kind of
Right.
maintain a certain lifestyle and then invest the rest.
I think it's definitely a key component of it, right? There's a great story in the book actually about a millionaire who drove this beat up old truck, and everybody was like, "Why are you driving this truck? You could buy any car you want." And he's like, "Well, I bought this truck outright. I don't have any payments on it,
Right.
and all the money that I would have spent on a fancy car, I invested, and that's actually made me more money."
I mean that makes complete sense when you lay it out like that.
Right.
But it's not the way most people think about it.
Exactly. And so it really is about kind of flipping that script and thinking about, okay, how can I make my money work for me
Okay.
rather than working for the stuff.
Okay, so that brings us, I think, to this whole concept of living below your means, which is something that I know we've talked about a little bit in the past, but I think the book does a really good job of kind of laying out what that actually means.
Mm.
And they use this analogy of the bucket, right?
Yes. The leaky bucket.
So can you explain that?
Yeah. So if you're spending more than you earn, that's like having a leaky bucket. You're constantly pouring money in, but it's just leaking out the bottom. You're never going to fill it up. But if you can live below your means, then you got a solid bucket. You can start to accumulate wealth. You can start to save. You can start to invest.
Yeah, and I mean that makes perfect sense. And I think that, we talked a lot on this show about kind of mindset shifts and things like that. And I think that that's a big part of it, right? It's realizing that you don't have to spend everything that you earn.
Exactly.
And that actually there's a lot of freedom that comes with not doing that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the things that I know I've struggled with, and I think a lot of people listening probably struggle with, is this idea of keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Right? Or what the book calls the status trap.
Yes.
This idea that we need to buy certain things to impress other people.
Right.
Or to project a certain image.
It's so insidious, isn't it? Because we get caught up in this comparison game and we feel like we need to have the latest gadget or the fanciest car or whatever it may be. And that's really what the status trap is all about.
And the book really, I think, does a good job of explaining how that can really sabotage our financial goals
It can.
because we're spending money on things that we don't necessarily need or even really want.
Right. It's not about value.
Yeah.
It's about appearances.
Yeah, it's about appearances.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do we avoid that? I mean, you know, we live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with advertising and messages telling us to buy things.
It's tough. It's really tough. But I think one of the first steps is just being aware of it, right?
Okay.
Recognizing that that trap is there. And then, asking yourself, okay, am I buying this because I truly need it, I value it, it's going to add to my life? Or am I buying it because I feel like I should? Or
Right.
because I want to impress somebody?
So really kind of examining our motivations, I guess, for wanting to buy things.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's assume that we've kind of taken that first step and we're trying to be more mindful about our spending and we're trying to avoid that status trap.
Yeah.
What are some practical tips? I mean, what are some things that we can do to actually make that happen?
Well, the book talks a lot about intentional spending, which I think is really powerful.
Okay.
So it's about really focusing on what matters most to you and then aligning your spending with those values.
Okay.
So, if you're really passionate about travel, for example,
Yeah.
then make sure you're allocating funds in your budget for travel. If it's, investing in your education
Right.
or your health or your relationships, whatever it is that truly lights you up,
Yeah.
make sure your spending reflects that.
So it sounds like budgeting is a key part of this.
It is.
So what does the book say about budgeting?
Well, there's a whole section on budgeting, which is fantastic. And they really encourage people to use modern tools. We have so many budgeting apps now that can make it so much easier
Yeah.
to track your spending, to automate your savings. Think back to the leaky bucket analogy. These apps can help you plug those leaks.
I like that.
They can help you see where your money is going and make sure that it's going to the things that are most important to you.
So it's kind of like giving you that awareness, which is really what we were just talking about.
Exactly.
Being aware of where our money's going and then making intentional choices about where we want it to go.
Yes. And they also talk about different budgeting strategies, like, the 50-30-20 rule, which is pretty popular.
Right.
50% of your income goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment.
Right.
And that's a great framework, but there are so many different ways to budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about finding what works for you.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. There's no one right way,
Yeah.
It's finding the way that works for your life, your personality, and all of that.
Exactly.
Okay, so one of the things that I think sometimes people kind of get hung up on or have a negative association with is this idea of frugality as deprivation.
Right.
That you're somehow missing out on things.
Yeah.
So how does the book address that?
It's interesting because they actually frame frugality as a path to empowerment.
Okay.
So it's not about what you're giving up, it's about what you're gaining.
I like that.
Right. It's about taking control of your finances and designing a life that aligns with your values.
Okay.
So it might be that you want to achieve financial independence,
Yeah.
or you want to retire early, or you just want the peace of mind that comes with knowing that you're financially secure.
Right.
And frugality can help you get there.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point. It's not about, never buying anything nice for yourself or always denying yourself things.
Right.
It's about making conscious choices.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your money.
Yeah. And I really like how the book kind of reframes it as this idea of empowerment.
It is.
That you're actually gaining something by being more frugal.
Yeah, you're getting control.
Yeah.
And freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah.
And peace of mind, I think, is a big one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, but what are some of the things that you think are most important for people to remember?
I think first and foremost, it's that frugality is not about deprivation. It's about empowerment. It's about making conscious choices that align with your values and your goals. And it's not about perfection.
Okay, I like that.
It's about progress.
Yeah.
It's about taking small steps every day to be more mindful of your spending and to make your money work for you.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to put it because it can feel overwhelming.
It can.
Right.
Yeah.
You read a book like this and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to change everything about my life.
Yeah, I need to sell all my stuff and live in a tiny house.
Right.
No, it's really about those small
The
changes.
small changes, yeah.
You know, maybe you start by tracking your spending for a month
Okay.
and just seeing where your money is going. Or maybe you challenge yourself to pack your lunch a few times a week instead of eating out. You
Right.
know, just those little things can make a big difference over time.
Yeah, and I think that that kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning,
Yeah.
about this kind of shift in mindset
Yeah.
and realizing that small changes can actually have a big impact over time.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest shift is moving from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Right. So instead of thinking, "Oh, I can't afford that," it's thinking, "Okay, if this is really important to me, how can I make it happen?"
Yeah.
And that's where the creativity comes
And
in.
a resourcefulness.
And the resourcefulness, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that that's a great point to end on, this idea of shifting our mindset from scarcity to abundance and realizing that frugality isn't about depriving ourselves.
Right.
It's about empowering ourselves
Exactly.
and creating the life that we really want.
Yeah. And I think, as you're thinking about all this, a good question to ask yourself is, what would I prioritize if I had more financial freedom?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. What would I do differently if I didn't have to worry about money all the time? And then start to make choices that move you in that direction.
Oh, I like that. That's a great kind of challenge to leave people with.
Yeah.
So thank you. This has been another great deep dive. Lots to think about. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.